Let's introduce you to Adrian Johnson. Adrian is over here, is our next guest. Adrian, thank you very much indeed. He's a spokesman for Just Stop Oil. Just Stop Oil must have... Could you sit forward a little bit?
Sorry.
Yeah. Just Stop Oil must have more spokesmen than anyone else. You not have any spokeswomen?
We do have spokeswomen, we do. We have both women and men that are spokespeople for Just Stop Oil, but I'm afraid I'm here tonight.
We've had women.
I just thought...
Thank you for having me.
No, Adrian, I always find the people who come into the studio from Just Stop Oil extremely, extremely polite. So that's good. Let's talk about the United Nations.
Great.
Do you know about this?
No, go on, let's
the United Nations has slammed the severe sentences for Just Stop Oil activists. I haven't even heard of a severe sentence, yeah?
Yeah, the ones on the Dartford Bridge got a couple of years, didn't they?
Well, that's fine.
3 years and 2 years, actually.
Oh, good, good. Well, I hadn't heard how many they got, but it's not long enough, because I know people who were stuck in the queues, and it, you know...
There was a couple of women died, actually, from going a different way on the hard shoulder. It wouldn't have gone that way if it hadn't have been blocked. So indirectly did cause a couple
You're losing public sympathy, as you know, Adrian. What can you say to convince me that you think you are talking for the majority of people?
Well, I wanted to talk about the UN, if I might, because you brought that up. Because... James and Ash, I would imagine that you really value that it's important that people can make protest in this country, because that's a really important part of our democracy.
Yeah, but not the sort of protest you've been making.
For example, you would not want us to be like, for example, Iran, where it is very, very dangerous, and the courage of people who do protest in Iran is absolutely amazing. And so I would suggest to you that it's really important that an external body, for example, like the United Nations, does look at what's happening into the United Kingdom.
Are done.
And you know that it's very important that they keep abreast of what's happening, and therefore feel that they need to intervene when things are going in the wrong direction. We don't need the United Nations
in this country. And first of all,
I don't need the United Nations.
We don't.
I mean, look at Iran are running their human rights at the moment. Most of the countries are horrible, despotic countries that make up the UN.
Yeah.
Just because it's the UN, you don't go, oh, it's the UN, it must be great. It's totally biased.
I think it is.
I'm suggesting that you would want us to be like that.
The UN are a terrible organisation.
If we don't have checks and balances like the United Nations, then we would be heading towards something like Iran. And that's why it's really important that they're intervening. Apparently, they wrote to the UK government in August,
stop.
and they did not get a reply, which was a little bit...
They hang people from cranes.
Ash, you stop. I'm getting a bit fed up with this. Now, you're talking complete and utter rubbish. I've never heard so much rubbish come out of somebody's mouth at the beginning of an interview. I want to see freedom of speech carried on in this country so people can actually say what they think. What I don't want is people trying to block other people's lives, trying to disrupt other people's lives. I don't want to see that at all.
To force the issue.
That is the path to dictatorship. Yeah. And you are not making any friends. Now, listen, the climate changes all the time. I'm no climate denier. And man, dog, cat, cow, whatever, all has an effect. Tree, everything has an effect on the climate, not to mention the sun, the moon, the solar winds. Everything has an effect on the climate. And I think we should clean up our jobs as well as we can. Clean up the ocean, I believe, absolutely. And we're trying to get that way. Unfortunately, this whole thing with electric cars and net zero is such a ridiculously stupid idea that it's going to backfire big time very soon. Now, you have to admit to me that you know you've lost the public sympathy.
No, I think it's actually the opposite. So, for example, the UK polls, so 40% of the UK... 40%.
Polls? You rely on polls?
40%, well... How else do we find out what the people know, James? I'm sorry. But 40% of the UK support our demand to stop new oil and gas.
Well, then use the ballot box. Why don't you use democratic means if you've got so much public support?
Protesting, as you know, is a very important part of democracy. It doesn't just start
I agree,
and
you should be able to
the
protest,
ballot
but
box.
what about blocking whole roads for days? That's not really legitimate protest, is it?
It is, you know, that it's a way that is very effective, and it has been throughout our great history as this great country. And also, the basic thing is, you really want the same as us. You want this country to be amazing and a world leader. That's exactly what we want.
But you're destroying it. People like you are destroying it.
No, we're not.
No, nothing. People like you are destroying it.
Our government is behaving criminally, James.
We know that. Yeah, we know that.
No.
That's why.
Net zero is not criminal. That is actually aligning with the what is
China,
absolutely
we lose
necessary.
our competitive advantage because other countries are going, look, they're taxing themselves, we'll produce this much
You told me you
cheaper,
were a
and
teacher.
We buy it from China.
Did you actually tell this rubbish to your pupils?
James, with respect, it isn't rubbish. It is science.
I'm sorry. Science changes the whole... Don't patronise me. I don't like it. I'm not
James,
in a good mood now.
I'm not
So
patronising
don't.
you.
Have a look at this clip, and this is a member of the public talking to you, not you.
What do you mean just stop oil? All your stuff is made out of oil, you idiot. Your clothes, these jackets, they're all made out of oil. What the hell are you doing here, making a nuisance of yourselves? It's a joke. What a joke. What are you doing here? Get out the road. You're wasting everybody's time and petrol. All these guys, their engines are running all the time, wasting more bloody oil, you nutters. What is this made out of? What are your clothes made out of? How did your clothes get here? They got here by oil. What are you doing? This makes no sense at all. Just stop oil. You haven't thought about this. If you want to stop oil, you need to stay up.
Well, he was very well controlled. If it'd been me, I'd have
I thought
been
it was
fine.
you for a minute.
No, it wasn't me. But
There are lots of people who feel like him, more than the few people you have on the streets.
James,
but they have to stop.
yeah, what you don't tend to see and what you don't tend to show on this kind of programme are the people that quietly come up to us day after day and say thank you for what you are doing.
Well, obviously you're going to get some support, but it is not the majority.
Well, I go back to the figures. If 40%...
40%
40%
not the
support
majority.
our demand.
Well, then use the ballot
but
box.
only 32% want new oil and gas.
But if
We're well
everyone went
ahead.
out with protests, just blocked a road, you know, there'd be anarchy. You can't have protests that can block people's lives from their doctor's appointments and operations.
I mean,
it's
if you
all right to go walk around with a placard and go to Parliament and protest that way, but when you actually start affecting people's lives, that's more trying to force the issue.
Okay, what you have to accept, and it's very, very difficult because I don't think you will accept it, is that we are doing this because the situation is very, very
Well, you
serious.
believe that. I understand that.
That's your belief.
believe
You're
this.
entitled to that, but you are not entitled to stand in front of me and say, I can't go on about my business until I've looked and listened to what you say. Because if it was me, we'd be in trouble. I'd probably
That's
be in
fascism,
prison.
isn't it? I mean, you know, you're forcing it.
The situation is, when people have the opportunity to listen to the science and really engage with it...
Oh, God, don't
then
go on about listen to the science. People have listened to the science. Scientists themselves disagree.
So I'll give you an example. Back in 2019, the government granted something called the Climate Citizens Assembly. They got 100
And what
normal
the
people,
hell does
ordinary
that mean?
people. Well, I'll tell you, okay?
100 people.
And it's called TalkTV, so I think you'll let me talk, if that's okay.
You're talking ever since you came in here.
Well, let me talk about this then. So over 100 ordinary people got together and they were engaged with the science, they listened to it, and they came up with hundreds of really, really good ideas. And they wanted to move faster than our government, they wanted to move harder than our government, they wanted to move broader than our government. As far as I'm aware, not one of their ideas have been put into practice. Now, that was democracy in action. Okay, that was asking people and engaging with them. That's what we desperately need. That's why we're going out on the road. We're doing that to engage
because it's
with
all
the
done by
government.
quangos, the net zero. It's not actually democratically decided. There's a climate quango, isn't it? That decides on everything.
I'm not
Listen,
sure about
guys,
that.
you know,
I disagree.
you need-
No,
you
don't
need to-
patronise
you
me.
need
You're
to
going with that
accept.
patronising teacher's voice, and I won't accept it. So I don't agree with you. I agree we need to look after the planet. I am not a climate change whatever denier.
With respect,
But having
and not
spoken
wishing
to
to
a number,
patronise you.
you are. But having listened to a number of scientists, a lot of them have different ideas, and science moves on. The science of today is not going to be the science of 10, 20, 30 years in the future.
You really need to know, and I'm not wishing to patronise it. I'm trying to help you here. I really, really am.
Well, that's patronising for a start, isn't
okay,
it?
let me put it a different way. You're talking about the scientists who disagree with man-made climate change. Yeah. Okay, that's possibly, let's say, less than 1%.
I didn't disagree with man-made climate change.
Well, that's not true, is it? Because they sort of fudge that. They say only 1% of scientists.
Everything we do, hang on, everything we do affects the climate to a certain way. The way we farm and everything else. You know, it's just ridiculous. Sadiq Khan brought in the ULEZ, and the benefits are not making any difference at all. He's in big trouble.
The Advertising Standards Authority
lots of people are very upset. The amount of congestion in the capital city and other because of the cyclist mob I mean, that is
It's
appalling.
interesting you should say that, because I was going to say to you, the congestion would be sorted by people doing active transport and better public transport.
Some people need to use their cars.
There's a lot of people. No one drives into London if they don't want to.
Some people do need to use their cars, but most people don't.
You wouldn't drive into London unless you have to, would you? Because you'd be mad to do that.
Well, people do, and that's the congestion, isn't it? If there's better public transport, it would be sorted.
I know somebody
London's pretty good transport,
who just cannot get around anymore because of this. They can't. They're quite elderly. They have an old car, and they can't use it now, and they are being locked in their own home because of ULEZ and because of this ridiculous... Everybody wants to... Not everybody, it's a minority. I mean, only 9 of you turned up the other day to one of your demonstrations. And you think you can get in the road, half a dozen of you, stop all the traffic, and that's great. It isn't. Are you going to tell me today you're going to stop using that? Excuse me.
No, because it is a vitally important action that we're doing, because we're doing that to engage with the Met Police. In 2019, the Met Police were given overwhelming evidence about the criminal behaviour of our government. They were given the same evidence again with extra in 2022. They're deciding not to act upon it. There's something called genocide by oblique intent.
Oh, for goodness sake. You know,
Would you like me to explain it?
No, you always have to bring the genocide word into it and the denier word.
I'm getting really annoyed with you, but let's just go back to the sentences of the people who follow you. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, not enough of you are sort of locked up. There you are in your smart suit, an ex-teacher and all of that. Loads of ex-teachers out there.
We had a doctor, didn't we? I mean, the law has found them guilty, so why shouldn't they, the law's sentenced them to jail? It's correct, isn't it?
At every point in the process, the arrest and the sentencing, the judge does a balance. Now, in this case, it is clear that the sentence is way, way stronger than anything, and way, way harsher.
Well, then appeal the sentence.
We have appealed.
So then the law will decide.
I've got an interesting...
This is where the UN are wading in, because they are very...
Can we not talk about the UN? The UN are a bunch of people who we could well do without.
You did bring it up at the start of the
I know. Let me just read this out. I've only got 2 minutes left. Vic says 7 gallons of crude oil goes into making 1 tyre. So basically they are against the rubber-coated wheel. So it's back to the wooden wheel and the steel band. I think he means a steel band.
I quite like that. More romantic, like the old days, with a horse.
James,
thoughts?
Thoughts of this. We have never said stop using oil now, immediately. We're talking about new oil and gas, okay?
We need oil and gas. You've just admitted that.
We do. But
much better to get it from here. Much better to use it from here than import it in.
Yeah, we're going to use those for 6 or 7 years.
But you guys are complaining about the new licences being given out.
Yeah,
so obviously...
They don't like new oil.
Not just us, by the way. The International Energy Agency, the UN IPCC, the world scientists... When you say things like you're not following the science, you've got to realise that it's starting to sound like you're talking about the Earth is flat.
They're scientific theories.
You've got to realise that you're on that kind of level.
Adrian, thank you very much indeed. We're never going to agree on this, but we are going to fight for a long time, because I think what you're doing is ruining the democracy of this country, and I worry about that a great deal, because your guys going out there are acting more as dictators than anything else.
I think it's an important part of our democracy now. I really value it, and that's why I do it.
We will agree to differ. Thank you very much indeed. I look forward to your calls when we come back after the news, which is very nearly here. God, where's the time going?
10 seconds.
The number to call 0